I'm Skylar, and I'm about to share a part of my past that I've kept hidden. As a young girl, I developed an unusual and unsettling habit. I was fascinated with watching people sleep. It began innocuously but soon spiraled into something more obsessive. I even started collecting single socks from each person I observed, relishing the thought of them waking up to find one missing. This peculiar habit gave me a sense of control and power. I would spend hours just watching my friends sleep during sleepovers, feeling like I owned those quiet, private moments. To me, everyone in the city belonged to me during the night. It was a time when I didn't have to share them with the world. But there were moments that broke the enchantment, particularly when someone would unexpectedly wake up. Those interruptions were jarring and often left me feeling nauseated and disoriented. If discovered, I'd have to hastily fabricate an excuse and then lose all interest in that person. Since I spent my nights awake, I found ways to catch up on sleep during the day. I often hid in the school bathrooms or sneaked into empty classrooms to sleep, having memorized the school schedule to know which rooms would be vacant. During the day, I drifted through the hallways like a ghost, isolated and waiting for night to fall so I could indulge in my peculiar habit. There's an irony in it all. I watched others sleep so I could live out my dreams in a waking state. This obsession continued for years, becoming a routine that was increasingly difficult to satisfy. It was a strange need that grew more challenging to fulfill as time passed. Familiar with every resident in town, I yearned for something novel to rekindle the thrill of my nocturnal escapades. The arrival of new neighbors presented just that opportunity. From my vantage point, I observed them, always studying people when they're awake, deciphering the facade of their daily interactions. But it's in sleep that people reveal their true selves. The parents, wearied with heavy under-eye bags, clearly struggled with rest. Their son, Evan, however, intrigued me the most. He had a certain aura, one of shyness but also of being detached from the world, a trait I found captivating. That night, as their house darkened, I made my way to Evan's room. Watching him sleep, I felt a rush of excitement that was unique to new subjects. Evan was indeed different. His body language in sleep, fists clenched, lips tight, yet deep in slumber, spoke volumes. He was unlike anyone else I had observed, and I felt an instant peculiar connection. Quietly, I explored his room, noting his meticulousness. His belongings, just unpacked that morning, were already neatly organized. However, I was surprised to find no mismatched socks, a usual trophy in my collection. Evan, devoid of this common clutter, seemed even more enigmatic. Accepting this new challenge, I left his room, familiar with the house's layout from my previous nocturnal visits. In the bathroom, I rummaged through the laundry, my hand landing on his father's underwear, a deviation from my usual collection, but a testament to the evolving nature of my obsession. Evan, even in his sleep, had stirred something different within me, a curiosity that went beyond my usual ritual. Overwhelmed by revulsion yet driven by my compulsion, I continued to sift through the laundry, unsure which socks belonged to Evan. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply, trying to discern his scent. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps jarred me from my focus. Panic set in as I realized someone was awake and approaching the bathroom. Seeing people awake at night was unbearable for me, a stark contrast to the control I felt observing them in their vulnerable state of sleep. I hastily concealed myself in the bathroom, gripping one of the socks. Peering cautiously, I was relieved to see it was only Evan's father, not Evan himself. The sight of him awake was jarring, like a harsh interruption of a dream, making me feel physically ill. After he left, I hurried back to Evan's room, seeking solace in watching him sleep once more. The sock in my hand, a reminder of his father, filled me with disgust, and I quickly discarded it, wiping my hand on my clothing. I resolved to find a more suitable keepsake on another night. During the day at school, I saw Evan but kept my distance, indifferent to his interactions with others. My obsession was confined to the night when I felt he belonged to me. As the day dragged on, my anticipation for nightfall grew, along with my desire to be near him, to claim him in some intangible way. That night, upon returning to his room, I found him asleep and whispered a greeting. To my astonishment, he responded in his sleep. I had experienced sleep talkers before, but hearing Evan's voice was different, enchanting. It felt like a direct connection to him, a rare, intimate exchange. Overwhelmed with emotion, I knelt beside him, my hands clasped as though in prayer, reveling in the surreal moment of connection with my unsuspecting subject. In those moments beside Evan, it felt as if I was praying to him, acknowledging him as mine and mine alone. Our nocturnal conversations were an escape from reality. "How was school today?" I whispered to the sleeping Evan. "Boring," he murmured back, a faint smile touching his lips. We talked for hours, and he became the most captivating person I had ever met. Time slipped away unnoticed, and I was startled by the sound of his alarm clock as dawn approached. Reluctantly, I turned it off, wishing to prolong our secret interactions, but reality beckoned. The alarm would soon ring again, and he would wake up. The thought of seeing him awake at school, interacting with others, filled me with unease and jealousy. I left his room through the window, my emotions a tumultuous mix of anger and longing. At school, I tried to keep to myself, but it was increasingly difficult. I accidentally made eye contact with Evan in the hallway, a moment that sent a shiver through me. He looked away, oblivious to my presence, allowing me to breathe a sigh of relief. Watching him socialize with others, especially girls who seemed drawn to the new student, filled me with disgust. If only they knew what I knew about their true selves, the selves I had observed in their most vulnerable moments. But to me, Evan was different. He remained untouched by their attention, forever mine in a way they could never understand. I had finally managed to acquire one of Evan's used socks, cherishing it like a prized possession. I carried it with me to school and to his room each night, a symbol of our unique connection. Our conversations continued. He revealed his indifference towards school and popularity. There were two versions of Evan, the one everyone saw during the day and the one I knew at night. To me, he was a multifaceted mystery, part reality, part dream, wholly mine. Realizing everyone wears facades during the day, I felt I understood Evan in a way no one else did. Believing he was unhappy at school and only content with me, I decided to take action. I knew the school grounds well, including an abandoned house that seemed an ideal secretive meeting place. That night, I told Evan in his sleep about our planned rendezvous there, interpreting his sleep-talking responses as agreement. The next day, I slipped a cryptically worded note in Evan's locker, anticipating our secret meeting. However, when he didn't show up at the abandoned house, confusion and concern set in. I checked the door only to find it locked from the outside. Panic rose within me as I realized I couldn't escape without attracting unwanted attention. My heart sank as I overheard conversations outside, mocking voices labeling me as crazy and deserving of being trapped. The shocking truth hit me hard. My obsession was no secret, and now it was the subject of a cruel joke. The realization that even my precious Even was part of this charade was devastating. After agonizing moments, the door finally opened, revealing my classmates, old friends, and Evan. Their expressions ranged from amusement to disdain, but it was Evan's look of silent accusation that struck me the most. He wasn't the person I had imagined in my nightly visits. He was just as real and flawed as everyone else. One of my former friends stepped forward, her words dripping with scorn rather than concern. "Was that scary?" she asked, mocking my plight. "Did you feel trapped?" The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. I had spent so long watching others in their vulnerable moments, yet here I was, exposed and humiliated, my own vulnerabilities laid bare for all to see. In that moment, I realized the grave error of my ways. Even was never mine. He was a figment of my obsessive imagination. The weight of my actions and the consequences of my unhealthy obsession came crashing down on me. As I stood there, exposed and vulnerable, I realized the depth of my obsession and its consequences. I felt numb, indifferent to the possibility of being confined or punished. Even, the center of my fixation, was just another illusion, and the realization was shattering. There he was looking back at me, his eyes filled with concern. It was the first time we truly saw each other, and his gaze only fueled my anger. I had believed in a fantasy, poured my heart into a relationship that never existed. As the bell rang, the other students dispersed, but Evan lingered, his gaze still fixed on me. Confronted by his silence, I questioned whether I had any right to feel betrayed. After all, hadn't I made him an unwilling participant in my obsession? Yet he had known about it and never intervened, silently playing a role in the drama I had created around him. "Say something," I demanded, my frustration boiling over. In a moment of anger, I took out the sock I had taken from him, the symbol of my obsession, and threw it at his face. It was a futile gesture, but it carried all the weight of my realization and hurt. Evan's continued silence seemed to answer all the questions I had. He was as much a part of this twisted scenario as I was. The reality of the situation and my own part in it was painfully clear.